So, welcome back to the Safe and Effective podcast. I am Rico, better known as Right Wing Rico, just because a lot of my views happen to be right wing. Don't really have much, I'm not a very emotional type of person, so it's not very much about me that's liberal. I used to think that maybe I was 50-50. Turns out I'm maybe 99-1. It turns out I'm not very liberal about anything. And anyway, I wanted to bring up this topic. I've been getting messages all day from, the way it works with me, nobody from Los Angeles, who I grew up with, even though they share the same views and we see things the same way, they won't get on live. They don't want to talk out publicly, but they love what I'm doing. And my audience is not very big right now. Eventually it'll grow. However, in the meantime, people just bring topics to me that they want to know more about, but they want someone like me to help explain it to them. The USAID situation today, it came out yesterday, and people were trying to ask, they wanted to understand. They're trying to understand and get their brain wrapped around it. They seen some African girl talking about, how it's money that goes towards feeding them and giving them, helping all these poor people in different parts of the world. In my opinion, I do not know why my country is responsible for feeding the people in other parts of the world. It just doesn't make sense. If you want the United States to take care of you in another part of the world, give up your sovereignty and become a colony of the United States. But if your country cannot function without ripping off the United States or expecting us to take care of you, then maybe your country should not exist. If your country's only in existence so that you could be a launching pad eventually for us to initiate a war against China or Russia, then maybe China or Russia should take you back under their control to prevent themselves from being invaded one day. I just, let's just be honest. If we're going to be equal and fair, then I don't think that it's right that we're performing regime change operations in other parts of the world. And we're really, really bad at nation building. I mean, how good does Afghanistan look like right now? How well did we rebuild Syria? What kind of knockout job did we do on in Japan and in Iraq and Baghdad? Do you know that before the invasion of Iraq, the first heart transplant was done at a hospital in Baghdad? That will never happen again there. It can't. It's been destroyed. So we're really not good in nation building. We're really and we've think about it. Did we really do a successful regime change because Assad is no longer the president of Syria and he's in exile in Russia right now? I don't know. Is that considered success? Syria is being now invaded by the Turks and in Israel. Is it successful? He's not the president anymore. The country is unstable as ever to the point where the media won't even report on it. The media doesn't report no longer on how unstable Syria is or how Afghanistan is doing with all of our weapons, equipment that we left there after 20-something years of a botched pullout. It's just ridiculous. And again, what are the results? Regime change and nation building. Everything in our country is very, very expensive and very, very gay. So what are the results that we're getting from all this regime change and all the things that we're doing in other parts of the world for no reason? That was the purpose of USAID. USAID was providing funding for regime change operations in other parts of the world. And, until recently in life, I was a normie. I thought all revolutions were organic. But Black Lives Matter kind of made me feel a little bit weird. I remember being in Las Vegas at Fashion Show Mall one day, right? During the lockdown in 2020, because I left LA because everything was closed and nothing made sense. And everybody just started talking about how much they hate the country and hate the flag. It was just weird. It started getting very, very weird. And then I started seeing more men dressed as women working in regular stores. I'm like, what the hell is all this? It's like just came out of nowhere. And I'm an LA native, so I'm not used to that. So I evacuated LA and I went to Vegas for a while just because at least I can just hang out at the casinos. I walk into Fashion Show Mall literally Black Lives Matter clothing, shoes, sweaters, t-shirts, just in the front of stores like Chic and like Foot Locker. And I'm like, what the, wait a minute. When the hell did a protest turn into a mainstream operation that is selling merch? I thought this was just people complaining about, police being killed, because according to the Black people that were telling me at the time about it, 2 to 3 million Black people are killed every year by the police. I was like, man, you guys must have a higher birth rate than I thought, because how are you able to sustain a population of 13% if millions of you are being killed unarmed by police and they're just hunting you down? Like, how did you make it to the age that you're at and survive law enforcement in America if it's that dangerous? Matter of fact, why would you have kids and still live in the country if they're being hunted down? I mean, wouldn't that automatically be child abuse if you didn't try to find somewhere safe to get your kids out to go? I think someone's lying, but I digress. I'm watching, all of a sudden, everything is BLM, and I'm like, wait a minute, who's funding this? And you find out that there's corporations that are donating money to this group. And you're like, okay, well, let me look into this group and where they're getting their money from. And then you find out all that money is coming from these strange sources. I believe USAID was also a source of some of this funding, but it's in a way they were doing their own form of regime change by using BLM. And corporations were donating all this money that was disappearing, but then it was being funneled back. And you look to where it's going, it was all going to Democrat politicians, and nobody knew. They thought that it was going to the families of the millions of Black people that are being killed by the police every year. Wrong. No, it wasn't. So that's on a microcosm scale in the United States. Imagine what's happening in other parts of the world. When you're seeing gay and trans flags being flown in a country like Russia that does not deal with pedos the way that California and the United States does. When you're seeing, color revolutions in Saudi Arabia or in Egypt, and you're watching these protests and you're thinking, wow, who organized all these people? They don't even have Facebook access. How are they all getting together? And you're wondering, but then you find out that really they're being paid by groups from the United States that have huge pockets of unaccounted for money. It's not a part of the Fed, so they're not accountable to the Fed, but it's still a slight representative of the United States. And what they do is they put money and they install people in these countries, and they can turn on protests whenever they want to, and they're heavily funded. And people are on the streets because they're paid, not because they actually believe in whatever they're protesting. They're there because it's their job, and then because they're making money off of it, and people go there to record it, and then they share it, and then they build up people in the population. They build up support by pretending that it's the popular thing to do. I remember they were trying to convince me that everything being gay and trans was the popular thing to do. But I'm looking at it on the internet, but then when I walk outside, everybody's like, why is everything so weird? What is this going on? What's happening? And then that's when you realize the media and the outlook that they want you to have on the world around you, that they're showing you on television, on the internet. When you walk outside and actually touch grass, it's not there. The internet, it's fake. It's all nonsense. But when you're trying to justify an invasion, or you're trying to justify somebody to come in and assassinate someone, and you want public sentiment on your side, you do these nefarious things like sponsor rebels in certain countries, and you have them undermine their duly elected governments. I mean, think about it. When they did the Maidan coup in the Ukraine, that was the first time they actually had a democratically elected president. That's who the people elected, except he was friendly to the Russians. He wanted to work with the Russians and work with Putin and do business. But the West could not have that, because they're already involved in energy, and they're trying to literally get control over the energy market that comes into Europe through the Ukraine. And if you're actually at peace with Russia, they're not going to be able to take over and control the flow of energy. That's why we blew the Nord Stream in the first place, so that the Germans would have to buy liquid LNG and oil from us. But instead, they're just really buying it from proxies of Russia, and it's just they're just paying a premium, and that's why the Germans have went into such a deep depression and have been deindustrialized. And I have an extremely high affinity for Germany because I used to live there. I love the German people. I speak German. And then to watch the country go down so bad in such a short period of time is just insane. But we have to get rid of those politicians there too. However, I'm America first because this is where a lot of it starts. This is Alexander Mercouris and alexanderchristoforou, amazing people when it comes to global politics, and they're from the Duran. They actually can break down this whole USAID better than me, but they're going to talk to you about the same things, how they're installed in other parts of the world and they can turn on a protest in a heartbeat. You're going to think it's organic, but it's not. And that's how the regime change starts. We're just not really good at it because the people that we put in charge do a horrible job, but it also is not benefiting the United States. Again, everything here is extremely expensive and everything is really, really gay and really, really black. So is that what we're trying to protect? Gayness and blackness, and basically we're being ripped off and made poor. So that's why it's a failure. I can see if it was everything we're doing with regime change in other parts of the world, we're generating amazing results at home. But it's not. It's actually bringing down our country the same way it is in these other parts of the world. The only people that are actually benefiting are the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization, and the Davos Group. No one else is benefiting from how things are happening in the West. BRICS nations are also doing well, but there's no need for BRICS if Trump's in charge because the American dollar can be used. He's not going to use it as a weapon with sanctions to penalize other countries and steal their money. So there's no need to get rid of the dollar. So there's really no need for BRICS under Trump. But what if we don't win again in 4 years and the gayness and trans nonsense comes back? Then we're back where we just got out of, which is a problem. But I wanted to start this video, let these guys, let the two Alexes tell you about how USAID works in a global, on the global stage.
It's not just hostile countries; it's also present in so-called friendly countries, and it's been able to control or play a significant role in controlling domestic politics in these countries because it comes in with deep pockets and paying all kinds of people. If you're talking about, say, a country like Armenia or Georgia, well, in Georgia we have seen the huge amount of protests and opposition that's come from all of these agencies when these countries start passing foreign agents laws. Now, the Trump administration is in effect passing its own foreign agents law, affecting all of these agencies for these countries. I mean, if they start taking money from USAID.
When he says foreign agents laws, what he means is there's going to be laws where you have to disclose who's paying you and why. So there's transparency. We can find out if you're a spy or if you're working for another country, but you're also living and working in the United States. Anybody who's familiar with Hunter Biden, he was able to skirt those laws and he was not prosecuted for being a foreign agent, even though he was accepting money on behalf of Russians, Ukrainians, Chinese, etc. We don't even know the full extent. That laptop from hell had so much information on there that it was too much to even go through and actually expose. But that's why they're passing new foreign agent laws, so we can also know who is also in bed with these other countries and try to find out what their motives are. That's what he means by these foreign agent laws.
Taking money directly from the US government. So it completely changes everything.
You remove the plausible deniability.
You absolutely,
because you can have a protest springing up in Georgia, right? And we can do a show and we could say the U.S. government is behind it, but the U.S. government could say we had nothing to do with it. I don't know, maybe NED, maybe U.S. I don't know. Maybe there are some groups, who knows? But the U.S. government, we have nothing to do with it. But now, if it gets folded underneath the State Department, well, then it is absolutely the U.S. government, not only the U.S. government, the State Department, the Foreign Ministry that is meddling in a country's partners directly.
USAID right now was kind of operating like a nonprofit. What they're saying is that it can be dissolved or it can be folded under the State Department or another federal agency, where now there's going to have to be some transparency and we're going to actually have to know what's going on and everything's going to have to be accounted for. There's already senators that are coming out trying to protect this and saying that what Elon Musk is doing is illegal by wanting to dissolve or shut down all this foreign aid going to these other countries in the form of regime for the purposes of regime change, saying that this is the only way that we've been able to counter the Belt and Road Initiative by the Chinese. It doesn't look like we're countering a goddamn thing. I don't see where the Chinese is not doing, they're not doing whatever the hell they want to do anyway, but they're a sovereign nation. Who are we to tell them what they can and cannot do? Can they tell us what we can and cannot do? Why? Why not? Oh, because we have a military and we're willing to flex our muscle. They have one too. Pushing nations around is only okay if the nation is substantially weaker than you. Why do you think we're fighting Russia through the Ukraine and not directly? It's because, unfortunately, we don't stand a chance. Our military is way too black and way too gay, especially now. No one even wants to sign up anymore because what are you signing up? What way of life are you going to sign up as a patriot young man to protect? Drag queen story hour for kindergartners? I think the hell not. The only people that are signing up are people that want to get their trans surgery paid for and find a way to get the government to subsidize their college education so they can buy a fucking Camaro.
Correct. Now, this is not unimportant. In fact, it marks a revolutionary change in the way in which the United States conducts its foreign policy. It means, in effect, that the regime change community, which is enormous, is being massively undermined. And arguably, I mean, if this is all followed through, it won't be able to function at all.
Who knew that there was even a regime change community? But again, through USAID, we're putting so much money behind so many people in so many different countries, all coming from one source, the USAID, that it actually is a community, if you think about it.
Not in the way that it has done for the last 30, 40, 50 years.
So to follow up on that, this would mean that if it were to be folded underneath the State Department, it would mean that if you pay for protesters, that would have to come out from the budget of the State Department. If you pay for flags, for those EU flags and those Ukraine flags you see at the protests, if you pay for posters and flyers and media companies and all of that stuff,
and rock groups.
You know what's crazy? I remember I was flying back home to Germany. I was landing in Frankfurt. As soon as I land, I see we have this really huge, there's an EU statue. There's a EU headquarters not too far away from the airport in Frankfurt. And it was on fire. And literally there's this like a bunch of people with flags, a bunch of papers, bunch of propaganda pamphlets, and all these people literally burning things up in front of the. And I'm like, wait, they're buying this just to burn it? Obviously, this isn't coming out of these people's pockets. And matter of fact, nobody that I know, especially in Germany or in the United States, we don't know anybody that's ever involved in any of these protests. So if they're organic, then where are they coming from? Who are the people involved in these? And you find out they're not from the area. You don't know them. They're actually a part of a club, like a community of paid protesters that just go around to different sites and they'll give you your memorabilia for today. Flags for this country, flags for this organization, pamphlets for saying this, sweaters that say that, beanies that say this. But they're all just paid actors. Just like the people that you thought were going to vote for Kamala that they had to bus in to these different events. It's all just smoke and mirrors. This Trump thing is organic. It's real. The rest of the stuff is nonsense. And that's why when Musk is calling out, because think about it, they were going to use USAID to bring down Trump and Musk by convincing you that it's public, that it's the public sentiment, even though the public just rejected Democrats and liberalism. And on November 5th of last year, now they want to pretend that it's already been reversed. And now the popular mandate amongst the public is to remove our sitting president, who we adore, Elon Musk, who, even though he's untrustworthy, as of now, he's still a net positive. Even though he does lie to you about outer space and going to Mars, that's all lies and BS. His rockets don't go anywhere. They don't go to space. There's no Tesla Roadster in orbit going 70,000 miles per second like a speeding bullet, which is what they tell you things are in orbit or how fast they're moving. It's all nonsense, but he knows that and he lies to you. And not to say he's completely trustworthy, but it's in his best interest right now to save his own ass to work with us and actually help us to dismantle this community that could eventually come after him and Trump or anybody else that's a conservative who wants to save the country. These are groups that want to dissolve nations, corporations, whatever they can, because they want to replace it with something that they control, something controlled by the state. That's why they tell you this is a technocratic communist takeover. In California, they removed the insurance companies. Guess who's going to be now providing insurance? The state. That's a means of production, is now controlled by the state. Who's going to be rebuilding the properties if they're not allowing just independent developers to come back and rebuild? The state's going to be building the properties. Guess who's going to own them? The state. Now California's it's a China, it's a Cuba. You're not buying land anymore. They'll lease it to you for 99 years, but you can't own it. That's what communism is, and that's why you see this creep, and that's why you see this huge push to stop it before it gets any worse. I hope I'm not talking too fast. It's just that this is a lot of information, and if you can, play the video again, share it again. But I mean, I talk about this every day, so if you miss it today, we'll be talking about it again tomorrow.
All of it, the tents, the food, the cookies and the bread that get passed out by various people, all of that.
Exactly.
Yeah, all of that is part of the machinery of the Department of State.
Correct. Absolutely correct. And has to be declared as such to Congress in Washington as part of, the various audits and oversights that happen. And of course, the government of the host country knows it. And so do the people.
All right, here's a question for you. Tough question. Maybe a prediction. Do you think they're going to shut it down, or do you think they're going to fold underneath a government organization? I say this because if you look at Elon Musk, the businessman, you can probably say the same thing about Trump. But if you look at the way he handled X, for example, when he came into X, he downsized it big time. He got a lot of criticism for it, but it turned out that it worked. It was more efficient and better run. Do you think that? So
that's the problem. Do you really want a more efficient and better ran USAID? So we turn it from a weapon that the Democrats were using to do regime change in a part of the world to a weapon that conservatives are going to use to do regime change, because that's the sole purpose. It serves no other benefit to anyone. It's just a regime change, in a way, money laundering organization that is also contributing to a facade of nation building, even though we've never successfully rebuilt anywhere at all. So I don't know. I mean, in my opinion, it should be dissolved, but they're actually weighing which one it's going to be. By the way, this is the Duran. So this is alexanderchristoforou and Alexander Mercouris. I put their links in the bio, so you should follow them. I want to give them credit for using so much of their video. But the reason they're how I know so much about what's going on in the Ukraine. I do read the Telegram, and I read from the different Russian media and independent journalists, and then they also compile data as well. And that's how we have a better understanding about what's happening in the Ukraine between Russia than our own President Trump, who's probably just getting his information third or fourth hand from somebody who's not really paying attention. These guys, neither one of them live in the United States. He just speaks American English, but he's in Greece. So, just keep in mind that these are not people that are based here in the United States. So they're going to have a different, and I would believe a more accurate depiction of what's happening on a global stage.
That Elon Musk is thinking along the same lines with USAID, or?
Well, maybe. I mean, the thing to say about USAID is that, of course, nominally it is supposed to be an agency to provide humanitarian and economic assistance to various places. So, which need it. And you could argue that this is a legitimate use of tax dollars, and one that most Americans would support if it's done properly and it's conducted with proper oversight, which is, of course, exactly what Elon Musk did with X. I mean, he done.
Well, think about it. Nothing's free. If we're providing humanitarian aid to your country, we're going to want something. You're going to have to give it to us. So, and I mean, we're twisting your arm in a way. I mean, is that what we want to have to? Is that what we want to be? We want to be in charge of doing that indefinitely? I think we should dissolve it or not do it.
Downsized it. He brought X closer to what it was originally supposed to be. I mean, I know that's a controversial statement. Some people are really going to say, he completely distorted what X was, Twitter was. I disagree. I mean, Twitter was absolutely a part before of the regime change community in exactly the same way that USAID was.
Twitter absolutely was a part of the regime change community. Remember what I said when you thought everything was gay and everything was black and trans and you thought you were just a crazy psycho on the outside of reality until you walked outside and touched grass and realized that all that BS is just on the internet? That was because of Twitter and social media banning voices like myself who would tell you the truth, which is that in reality, none of us like any of that stuff. I mean, no one likes gay kids. No one wants to see a trans kid. No one likes D Wade's kid. No one really likes Magic Johnson's fucking kid. No one likes that guy. So, but in reality, people feel and think the way I'm thinking, the way I think and my views. And, you know, most people are right wing. You know, remember, we're a right wing country with just a few blue cities, but as the Black African American communist community is now, since the euthanasia started in 2021, that community is shrinking so fast that even our cities won't be blue much longer. So, I mean, you got to keep in mind things are changing.
Seems to be doing well. Business.
Exactly. And as you said, Trump and Musk are business people, and they look at this and they see this huge, vast, shadowy, massively expensive, because it is. I mean, you know, the regime change business is a hugely expensive business, and we're talking about billions of dollars being spent by the United States through these various agencies. You know, all the money filtered around and moving around the world in ways that nobody's able to.
No accountability, billions of dollars a year. Would they say 1,200 military bases that no one really knows what they do or what they're for? And each military base costs about $1 million a day to operate. And we have no idea. This has been going on since what, the 60s, the 70s, building all these bases. It's all just a waste. And I mean, I know we can pretend like, yeah, we can just print money, but really it's not us. It's the Federal Reserve printing the money and we have to borrow it from them at interest. But then everyone's looking crazy when they tell you that we're, 36 trillion in debt. And they're like, well, how? We have a very robust economy. What is it? 7 trillion a year economy. How are we in so much debt? Well, there's all these things we're doing that don't generate any money, like these military bases. They generate nothing. They generate for us just as much as Elon Musk rockets to nowhere generate. Sure, they want to tell you they're putting a satellite in space, but are they really? What use do satellites play when we have underground cables connecting land masses through cables that run between oceans? So there's a lot of things that are going on that don't make any money and they don't generate a profit that we're going to need to cut back on if the goal is to save the country from expensive money laundering nonsense, which is what Doge is hopefully what Doge is doing. But getting rid of USAID or bringing it under control where you can be accountable for this money is going to put a huge dent in the deep state and what their plans are with the world. But it'll also, it'll get the public used to transparency so that we're going to demand it. We've never had it. We've never had a Doge. We've never had any idea what was going on in government. Now, even if they try to stop doing it, people are going to, no matter how left-wing you are, you're going to be like, well, why do you guys want to be so cloak and dagger? Why do you want to be so secretive? What are you guys hiding? Now we're going to start demanding transparency. And I think that's another part of what they're afraid of happening, but it's too late. The president is saying it. Elon Musk is doing it. And it's public now. It's out in the open. now everybody's going to hunger for it and ask questions, no matter which side you're on. So again, this is all a net positive, in my opinion.
Track on. Well, if you're a businessman, you don't like that. You want to know where every dollar you spend is being used. No business that doesn't do that can survive for very long. You've been a businessman yourself, you know that. I've been a bankruptcy lawyer myself, I know that. So, it's absolutely understandable that Trump and Musk would want to bring it fully under control. In Musk's case, I have to say that I think he's entirely skeptical about the entire agency and every part of what it does. I think his own instinct would be to shut it down. Now, there might be some bureaucratic resistance to that. There might be some resistance in Congress. There might be that kind of thing. So perhaps more logically, more plausibly, it will be downsized and stripped down and brought under control. But I think that, as I said, Musk's instinct is to say, well, what is this thing? What does it really do? What value added to the United States does it really provide? I mean, it keeps a lot of people busy meddling and interfering in all kinds of things around the world. But does this really ultimately benefit the United States? And is this really anyway what the United States should be involved in? Now, I think Musk's instinct would be to close it down. And by the way, Trump, who is a businessman himself, and contrary to what some people want to pretend, a successful businessman, you don't have a fortune of $7 billion and survive all these pressures that he's been under for the last 4 years, unless you are a successful businessman. I think he understands this too, and I think he would probably be quite receptive to any proposal from Musk saying, this thing really doesn't make any sense. Let's just close it down. But we're not just talking about business, we're talking about politics. There might be people in the Republican Party who Trump needs to keep friendly with, who wouldn't want to see it completely closed down. There might be some pushback from within, the intelligence community or the State Department or that kind of thing. And they may decide, well, let's just bring it under control, strip it down, make it work, and leave it still in existence in some form.
Well, the American president and the American public are at war with the American intelligence agencies. I don't think there's going to be a compromise. These agencies are literally planning on obstructing Trump's mandate, which is obstructing the people's mandate. They're already openly talking about it. There was an expose from James O'Keefe with some people that work within the Fed that are already talking about it. If USAID can be weaponized against the president and the people, then, I mean, in my opinion, dismantle the weapon so it can't be used against you. If you try to revamp it or remove the bullets from it, but leave the weapon still there, and hopefully they don't try to put some new bullets in it, then, I mean, you're just basically delaying the inevitable. It needs to actually, because they're going to tell you that, oh, well, you can't dissolve it because, that'll be illegal. Congress has to do it. But we all know that we don't really have a Congress. Our Congress is bought and sold by lobbyists, and they do whatever the people that are putting money in their pockets tell them to do. That's why someone like Pelosi, who's in government with $180,000 a year salary, she's worth what now, $240 million? And she's not the only one. So, there's a lot of money in being basically a politician that's paid for, which is in a way a lobbyist. There's a lot of money in that. So that's where the pushback is going to come from, because the people that are paying them are telling them to push back, because some of these are their programs. They set up these nonprofits in other countries. They're saying that they're going to do certain things. They add them into these spending bills. They get funded. They can funnel the money to their, it's a nonprofit. So they can say, well, these are the salaries, and 10% of it can go towards doing something in another country. But there's really no way for you to audit. You don't know what they're really doing. You don't know where the money even really went. So you can't trust it. So no, I really don't think that it'd be a good idea to just revamp it. I would think it'd be the best idea to just dissolve it. Dissolve some of these agencies. We don't need them. and put something else there in instead, and something that's more reliable and transparent for the people. Because people need to know what's going on in their name.
But this should not be underestimated, just to repeat again. And one should not be cynical about this. It's real. Now, whether ultimately it succeeds, that comes down to whether the whole Trump project succeeds. And just to say, this attack on US aid is emblematic of what is taking place in Washington altogether, which is a revolution. And again, I think people don't see it for that, partly because it's a revolution that gives some impression that its time has come, and therefore it is meeting so far with very little resistance, and it is transforming everything.
Well, I'll give you a question about the resistance very soon, because something did come up on X, which I think people need to take note of. But before we get there, I want to ask you, how does this affect how the world looks at these NGOs and these think tanks? For example, the Fizos, the Orbans, Georgia just successfully fought off a regime change. Syria had a regime change.
Yeah.
That one finally removed Assad. So how do you think the world is going to react to this change? I mean, the big dog of regime change players, right? The Michael Jordan regime, the Manchester United after the Arsenal, the Barcelona, the Real Madrid of regime change is being dismantled. How is the world gonna look at this? Well, does it mean that we're not going to have any more regime changes by the United States, by other countries anymore? I mean, what does this all mean?
Well, I think most governments around the world are going to be very cautious, and they're going to wait and see, and they're going to say to themselves, is it really for real? Is the United States genuinely leaving the regime change, the regime change game behind it? And they'll be extremely cautious about this. If the United States does really put it behind it, I mean, to say it straightforwardly, there will be a major improvement in international relations. Governments around the world are going to be very relieved and very happy, in the Middle East, in Africa, in Latin America, wherever it is.
Well, I mean, you got to think about it. In these other countries, for example, they're all highly conservative and very religious. In order to get some of this money, in order to get some of this funding from us, you have to enact what we're exporting, and you have to implement them into your population. So when they say that they want to do gender studies in Pakistan, or promote LGBTQP elemental pedo stuff in Georgia, or in some faraway land, this is the stuff that you have to do if you want the money. So what they're exporting to you is a lifestyle. And if you want to have access to the money, you have to do what they're telling you to do, except the gay stuff. You don't want to, because it's counter to your beliefs and how you were raised, and what your country stands for and the people. But you want the money. You want to say you're being diverse. You want to, remember, it's all pretty much ESG, environmental social governance, which is the parent company of DEI, except they do it in other parts of the world. It's not just happening here. They want to use ESG policies, and they make you dance with men or people of the same gender. That's the dance you have to do. And then they throw money at you like a stripper. And if you want the money, you're going to play the game. You're going to dance, or you're not going to get funded. But whatever you won't do in one of these poor countries, there's 100 more people that are more than willing to sell out their own people for money. They bought the lives of hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian men that they sent to the meat grinder in the Ukraine. So that means that there's always somebody that willing to take money for anything, whether it's to sell their own people death or to push homosexuality, whatever you want to do. There's always somebody willing to do it if you want. So, and if you don't do it, they'll do a regime change on you. So that's how you get people to, it's kind of like you're blackmailing them. You hold the money over somebody's head, they'll do anything to get it. It's no different than the human dynamic is consistent across the board. It's not really anything special.
But it'll be one thing less for them to worry about. And if we're talking about relations between, say, countries like the US and Russia, I mean, long before we started getting crises in Ukraine and wherever, the Russians were worried about the fact that the US was interfering in their internal affairs, for example. They were constantly complaining about this. And if that is suddenly switched off, I mean, that will be a major source of tension that will have gone away. But in the meantime, they're going to be looking at all of this. They're going to be extremely cautious. And they're going to say to themselves, well, is this for real? Is it not? Is there some catch somewhere? Even if it is for real, even if Trump and Musk really mean what they're doing, will they in the end succeed?
I'll give you an example of what he was just talking about, how the Russians would be relieved that there's no more USAID funding revolts or funding opposition people in Russia, trying to create regime change. They've been trying to do regime change against Putin since Putin came into office, and it's just not going to happen because the Russian people support Putin and they're behind what Putin is doing, which is trying to protect their way of life and trying to, keep the country from being divided up by the West. There was a man by the name of Alexei Navalny, who was just recently passed away, probably last year. And they were trying to say Putin assassinated him or whatever. But what he was doing was performing regime change protests against Putin and was trying to run for office against Putin. But he was a direct beneficiary of USAID. And he literally had a chance of taking down Putin, was generating a lot of anti-Putin sentiment. That's why these countries will be so relieved to not have to worry about that anymore, because in a way you're paying people for a fake grassroots revolt that wouldn't be there without the money. And that's why it's so dangerous.
Today, in Russia, since we're talking about Russia, Medvedev, who's the deputy chair of the Security Council of Russia, who's a very, very senior man, former president, as we know, he said that he worries that the deep state is going to come after Musk and eat him up. So I mean, they are worried about that. They say to themselves, will it succeed or won't it succeed? But of course, governments have always known what USAID is really about. It's been difficult to fight it up to now. Now it's going to be a lot easier, regardless of what happens in the long term. But as I said, they're going to be very cautious.
Well, Bill Kristol, going off of what you said with Medvedev, he put out a post on X saying the deep state is far preferable to the Trump state. We know who Bill Kristol is. We don't need to get it.
You know, it's funny. 5 years ago, they said the deep state didn't exist. And now you have somebody like Bill Kristol literally referring to them by name in a sentence against Trump. Wow, does the pendulum swing?
Into any of the details or background, Bill Kristol, but I read this post on X as Bill Kristol's way of saying, let's push back. Let's fight this.
Yes.
Yeah, they're not going to go down. I mean, the USA, the permanent state, the deep state, they're not just going to go down that easily. We're going to fight this.
We are to come back at this. We are at the start of an attempted revolution in the way in which the United States conducts all of its affairs. And Trump and Musk, not just Trump and Musk, but a whole lot of other people connected with the Trump team have come in and they've looked at the way the United States has been run and what it's been doing, and they want radical change. So we've had an incredible interview to Megyn Kelly by Marco Rubio. I discussed it recently in our program that, the United States cannot be the global government. The unipolar era is over. It was a aberrant event. The United States needs to act purely in its own interests from now on. It needs to embrace the fact that this is a multipolar system that is emerging, and it needs to rediscover diplomacy and to conduct proper diplomacy with the other great powers in the system in order to avoid conflict.
It sounds like what they're saying, what George Maloney is saying, is that America first should be the focus. America first should be the mandate. We should be focused more on our own country instead of trying to manipulate the world by, you gotta think about it. That's not even, this is obviously coming from the World Economic Forum when we're imposing sending money to these other countries, but we're forcing them to adopt LGBTQP queer ideology nonsense to get the money. That's obviously not America's mandate. That's not our goal. But remember, they penetrated our cabinets from the World Economic Forum. The Biden regime, Obama, the way they look at Klaus Schwab, like he's like they're just starving in the desert, and he's just a beautiful glass of ice cold water. The kind of hold mentally the World Economic Forum and people like Noel Harari and Klaus Schwab has on our leaders, it should be studied. It's very hard to explain, and I study this information, and I watch everything I can to learn about these people. And there's something else that we're missing. But when we're exporting the LGBTQ nonsense other countries and forcing them to adopt them in order to get money, we're really working on behalf of the World Economic Forum. We're not, and that's why they want control over us, more control, so that they can, have more access to our arsenal and to our resources to send them around. But they're literally trying to push this gay / depopulation agenda, because that's what it leads to. When you're pushing the LGBTQP on kids and other people in other countries, you're perpetuating the depopulation agenda, because that's what it leads to. 2 men are not going to have a kid, neither are 2 women. And they're trying to lower the population. They've already announced that in 2011, 2014, 2018, 2019. It just depends on what part of the population they want to reduce. And it seems to be like people of color, because these are all countries that are not Norwegian, to say the least, that they're actually pushing these agendas. And I don't know if you noticed this, but they're getting busy in Africa. Bill Gates is all over Africa, all over India, and the results are staggering. They're all over Haiti. We see how Haiti's turning out. So they're not just randomly trying to reduce the population of everybody. It seems like they have a type. And if you watch Twitter for 5 minutes, you can kind of understand why they have a type and why they're targeting certain people. I'm not saying that they're crazy for doing so. I'm just pointing out that they're doing so. I'm not necessarily saying that I disagree with them or that they're wrong. I don't like the fact that, they forced my favorite restaurants and bars and my nightlife to get closed down on me. I didn't appreciate that. That was my bottom line, my fun, I had to relocate my businesses, etc. But, it was still a choice in the United States. You didn't have to comply if you didn't want to. So, I don't know. There's only so much you can blame on other people. Half the problem is you. Half the problem is them. You could always reject things and say no. I don't know why, but if I don't at least be honest about that, then now I'm pretending to be a victim, and I'm not.
Now, that is an almost revolutionary statement compared to what we've been hearing from every other Secretary of State over the last 30 years. It is almost exactly the same, and I made this point on a program I recently did. It almost exactly follows the advice that Putin gave the Americans in his 2007 Munich Security Conference speech, the one which made Senator McCain and other Americans at that time so angry, and which caused such enormous offense and led to such an intense crisis between the Americans and the Russians.
do me a favor, like and subscribe to this video. We're trying to get more people to check out the content. We need more followers. I'd appreciate it if you don't mind subscribing to the YouTube page, liking the video, helps the algorithm. A lot of people are actually watching this on Rumble, which is great. I love the Rumble infrastructure. I'm going to start using a different type of background software so that the videos are larger, and I'm just kind of like the Hodge twins. I'm just trying to learn all these systems and stuff, better lighting. I'm going to get a different microphone. This one is, it's okay, but I want to sound different. So, but please like and subscribe, share the video, hit that button. I don't know. People say hit the bell, hit the button. Yeah, if you could do all those things. I'm still learning. I'm fairly new, but I'm growing. I'm growing all this stuff.
Well, that's Rubio, and he's talking about changing U.S. foreign policy.
From Rubio.
Former neocon, died in the wool neocon, just to say. So he's saying that, and he's obviously saying that because that's what Trump wants people to say. We also have a massive program of sackings and suspensions going on right across the bureaucracy. The FBI has been particularly targeted. The National Security Council, you remember this is where Alexander Vindman used to work. They're being cleaned out, apparently.
Oh, by the way, Trump is fired. He's fired all of the agents, which were over 1,000 that were involved in the January 6th prosecutions of primarily innocent Americans. There were a couple guys that might have pushed somebody or broke something. None of those people deserved years in prison. But everybody involved that didn't do the right thing and quit and say, I'm not going to, illegally go after Americans and target them for just walking into an open building. Their days are already numbered. Their numbers caught up to them. They're all being fired. We're purging the deep state and their operatives every single day.
The State Department is going to now be subjected to the same sort of attack, and Trump is unleashing Musk on the core department of all, which is the Treasury Department. Now, the Treasury Department doesn't just run the budget and the finance and collect taxes and do all of those kind of things. It also proposes and administers the sanctions. The whole sanctions apparatus is run by the Treasury. And from what I've been able to work out, they've been doing it all by themselves.
Oh, and just so you know, that's amazing. I didn't know the Treasury Department was in control of the sanctions and the money. Keep in mind, the American dollar started to get destroyed, and the global East and was already coming up with a new currency to compete with the dollar as the world's reserve currency, because we were using sanctions to punish countries and steal their money from them if they don't do what we want them to do, which is ridiculous because they're supposed to be able to trust that no matter what, no matter if we're at odds with each other, we're at war, the currency is not going to be affected. But if you're going to basically penalize people and take money out of their accounts and steal it by using sanctions to sanction banks, sanction other countries and tell them that, this country's money is now belongs to us and steal it, well, then there's no trust in the American dollar and you have no choice but to replace it. I mean, certain countries already started passing laws where it's illegal to use American currency. I believe some countries in Africa already started doing it. So, because remember, they signed up for BRICS early. Once people saw that they were using sanctions to weaponize sanctions against countries and steal their money, I mean, nobody wants to be stolen from. So, so this is good. I mean, yes, I'm glad they're getting in there and they're going to stop all that sanctions nonsense because that affects our bottom line with our American dollar. And if we're no longer the world reserve currency and people are no longer buying oil with our, with our American dollars, then we're screwed. It's called the petrodollar, by the way. I'm pretty sure many of you know that, but if you don't, now you know what the petrodollar is.
Practically without any real direct supervision. Most of the sanctions originate with ideas from this team within the Treasury. So Musk is coming after them too. And they're backing all of this by saying that they have this legal theory that everybody in the US government serves at the bidding of the president. So the president has the right to sack or appoint anyone he chooses, and that there are no legal restrictions which can be placed on what the president wants to do. And the New York Times is saying that the Trump people are so confident of this theory and are so sure that the Supreme Court will uphold it, that they're actually welcoming any lawsuits to try to stop or slow this firing program down, because they're confident that the Supreme Court of the United States will back what the president is doing, what Musk and Trump are doing.
Well, why would the Supreme Court, the ultimate law of the land, why would they be supporting Trump and what he's doing? Well, let's see. What happened to the Supreme Court people under Biden and Harris? Oh, they allowed one of our Supreme Court justices to almost get him and his family assassinated, killed. They reduced the budget for their protection. And then when protesters showed up outside of Justice Kavanaugh's house, they didn't do anything to stop that. For one thing, you cannot protest, or because that's a form of intimidation of a judge. So you're not allowed to go protest in front of their house or to try to influence their judgments, or their sway their opinions, because they are the ultimate law of the land. That was allowed under the Biden-Harris administration. I remember back in 2022, 2023, I believe, some guy showed up with a knife and rope and all, and saying he was there to take out Kavanaugh directly and his family. Trump, obviously, none of that's happening under Trump's watch, but there was no Biden. There was no Harris. It was just corporate. I don't know who was in charge, to be honest. I believe, from what I can gather, the World Economic Forum. But they've never taken over a country the size of the United States. So for them to micromanage and get everything right would be impossible. I'll be honest, I don't even think they knew they could do it. I bet they were surprised that they took over and were able to be in control of so many things. It was their first time around. That's why you can't give them a second try. Trump's first term, he did a lot of good, but he didn't know what he was doing. Now that he knows, I swear it's like he took no days off this whole Biden administration. He was literally working every single day. They made plans for what they were going to do every single day once he got elected. And literally with laser precision, he's been getting so much done. It's insane. If you go to the Safe and Effective podcast, I shared a whole list of things he's gotten done. And it's only been 2 weeks. 2 weeks. So, remember the Safe and Effective podcast. Some of you guys are watching on live there. But also follow the YouTube page as well, and the Rumble X Club Rico podcast. Subscribe. Let's keep back to the video.
And that will, of course, enormously increase the president's authority, Trump's authority over the US government. All that is going on. And then, of course, a complete shift in US economic policy, which also affects foreign policy too. So now we have tariffs on Mexico and Canada and China, and there's talk about massive tariffs being imposed on Europe as well.
Well, this video is from today also, but as of yesterday, those tariffs have been put on hold between Canada and Mexico, because both countries have agreed to put 10,000 soldiers on the border to stop illegal immigration from their country coming into the United States, and to stop the flow of fentanyl and other drugs. So that's been the compromise. So basically, Canada and Mexico talked a good game, and they capitulated immediately. They caved instantly. And they have to. I mean, it's not like what Trump is asking them is something wrong. They should be protecting their borders and enforcing ours. They should be doing that anyway. But we're watching how everybody's just kind of giving in. I remember some other idiot on Facebook was like, well, Mexico said he was going to put 15,000 people on the border under Biden. I was like, no, he didn't. But people will just lie and say anything. And I'm pretty sure you can guess his background. Gay black dude. Has kids. Still gay as shit.
This is a complete step away from globalization. It is, in effect, the end of the collective West. It takes us back to what we were talking about in another earlier program about a retreat to the hinterland, a retrenchment. Let's not call it a retreat, a retrenchment around the hinterland, and a move back towards spheres of influence. Now, all of this is a huge attempted revolution, massively ambitious. Of course, the Bill Crystal and the deep state and all of these people are going to oppose it. At the moment, they are in a state of shock. They didn't expect anything on this scale to have to hit them in the way that this is doing. That there are lots of them. The entire bureaucracy is full of these people. They have supporters in Congress as well. As we know, the media continues to be basically on their side. Sooner or later, sooner rather than later, they're going to start to push back. There's already criticisms, open criticisms of the tariff policies, claims that they're going to result in higher inflation, that they're economically illiterate, that they're going to bring about an economic crisis and a recession and all of those things.
Remember, the people that are bringing you the doom and gloom scenarios about what the effects of tariffs will be are people that are from outside the country or people that work in the country that deal in importing and exporting, because for them, it will affect them. For an American, if we're in a store and we see the price difference between two products is $5, one of the products is made in America, the other one is imported here from another country, we're going to go with whichever one is cheaper. It's a luxury to want to buy foreign brands and to deal with all these other countries. And that's why American businesses got put out of business, because we couldn't compete with slave labor. People come to me every day and say, well, Rico, who's going to go out there and pick the crops? Who's going to go out there and pick the berries and the fruit? And I was like, okay, this was 200 years ago. You sound like the kind of person to say, well, Rico, we in slavery. Who's going to pick the cotton? Who's going to pick the, I don't know, whatever slaves did. I don't know. From what I can tell, they didn't really do much. They sang, but yeah, I mean, it's basically, you see people complaining about you removing slave labor because they directly benefit from it. But for us as consumers, if there's no slave labor, then we can go back to producing in the United States. It just didn't make any sense because they could undercut us. If I'm an American guy and I'm mowing lawns and the year is 1998, all of a sudden I'm charging, $150, I'm charging $200 a week to come and make sure your landscaping's done on your palace you live in. But a Mexican guy comes and he doesn't have to pay taxes. He's under the table and he says, I'll do it for $100. Well, the person who's paying you was going to pay you $200. Now he's only going to have to pay this other guy $100. He's undercutting me by half because he's here illegally. He doesn't have to pay taxes and he's willing to work for slave wages. Okay, I can't compete with that. Once those people are removed and the opportunities are back, well, now we can afford to go back to paying Americans and building culture. Remember, the economy is directly attached to culture. You see Tim Pool talk about it a lot, how that was the end of skateboarding being a popular thing to do in the country, is when we stopped producing our own skateboards. Because you got to think about it, if you're at a skateboard shop, you make your own skateboards, you're selling it to local kids, they come there to skate. You're building a culture around the industry. But now if you're ordering skateboards from China, you don't see them, then all the skateboard stores close. Now there are no skateboarding. No, nobody even cares about it because it's not a part of your industry. You have to produce here in America to build the culture and build these businesses. Once you try to export things from other parts of the world for slave labor that are really cheap, yeah, the owner of the business is going to make a lot of money, but in 10 years, the culture behind that product is going to go away because it's not being made here. It's not a part of our culture anymore. So, you kind of want that to happen. You want to get rid of globalism. You want to become a patriot. You want to become a nationalist. You want everything to be made in America. You want to have, you want to replace those products they're shipping in with cheaper products that you're getting from here, because these tariffs are going to make it easy to compete with. Now, it was hard to compete as an American company. Now it's going to be easy. It's a more level playing field. You put a 25% tariff on top of slave labor. Well, shit, now we're damn near neck and neck. And if we're the same price, but I can buy American, and that's going to keep my neighbors employed and build culture and bring industry back home, then I'm with it. I'm with it. Why would I not do it? So keep that in mind. Things are changing, and this is a revolution right now happening.
Inevitably, at some point, the resistance will appear and it will be very strong. But we should not underestimate the scale of what is being attempted. And the attack on USAID is a part of it.
Yeah, Americans need to be ready, because the deep state is going to absolutely push back. Yeah. They're going to push back with all their might. Absolutely. So,
well, the deep state is being dismantled. There's still people in there that we don't know who they are. But once we're getting rid of the law enforcement wing of the deep state, it'll make it. They will become exposed, because remember, a hit dog will holler. They're going to start stepping out of the shadows to complain and to try to make moves, and they're going to expose themselves. And when they do, it'll be just like a game of whack-a-mole. We've been looking for these people for years. We just didn't know who they were. Now that their law enforcement arm is going to be removed, well, who's going to protect them? Who are they going to hide behind now? Their USAID money, all that money laundering, all that cloak and dagger secret money is gone. Well, now you're going to get exposed. We're going to find out who you are. The deep state is more of the permanent bureaucracy. The people that no matter who's the president, they have the same job and they're just in government forever. They're not elected. They're just there like Fauci, like a cancer that you got to literally cut out of something. You got to just literally burn it out. You can't take medicine and fix it. You got to just cut it all the way to hell out.
Americans should be prepared for this pushback that could come from the deep state, and Crystal's signaling it.
You're going to use these. See, the tax authorities are going to be using this, and part of the judiciary is going to be used, and all of these various instruments and things are going to be pulled. The wires are going to be pulled, and the levers are going to be pressed. So, as I said, we are on the cusp of an enormous political conflict in the United States, which is going to play out over the next year.
The interesting part to all of this, I was listening to Robert Barnes, and he brought up a good point, saying that all of this change that is going on it is huge. You're saying it's huge. I agree with you. It's absolutely huge. But we still don't have 2 or 3 of Trump's key pieces in position yet. Tulsi Gabbard, Patel at the FBI, and of course RFK Jr. Yes, at Health and Human Services. If they get confirmed, this is going to get even bigger. Absolutely, this change on all levels: health, foreign policy, law enforcement.
Yes, but of course they're putting all the stops to prevent them being confirmed. And Pete Hegseth only managed to get through on JD Vance's vote. So we're going to have a lot. There's going to be an enormous battle here, and one can't be sure that this is going to succeed. By the way, I'm glad you brought up Robert Barnes, because it was Robert Barnes who explained to us on one of the live streams we did with him this whole legal theory about the unitary nature of the executive, that it basically works around the president, who is the elected official at the core of the executive, and so that everybody in the executive takes their power from him, and he has the right, therefore, to appoint or sack whomever he chooses, subject, obviously, to confirmation by Congress, by the Senate in certain positions. So this is, as I said, the doctrine that has now been accepted by the Trump people, and which they're saying to all of these people that they're sacking, you want to bring a case, make our day. We'll take you all the way to the Supreme Court. We'll get a precedent there, and that will give us enormous reach. They're very, very confident about this. And the New York Times did an article which said that they're scared, that the deep state is scared of this, and that they're nervous, therefore, about bringing, head-on challenges, legal challenges. It's actually deterring people from bringing on head-on legal challenges because they fear that the Supreme Court will indeed uphold this theory if it goes to the Supreme Court, with all the implications that has. So there's an awful lot going on.
It better. The Supreme Court's lives literally depend on this. They're trying to destroy Clarence Thomas. They tried to destroy his marriage, his credibility. Amazon removed his documentary from their server. They wouldn't sell his book. I mean, they're literally, they have to reject this and win. Because if they don't, then, they're going to go back. The attacks against the Supreme Court are going to start again. And you're going to have you're not going to have the tech people supporting you no more. They all jump ship. Now they're over here with us on the right. So the Supreme Court the Supreme Court is not full of idiots. They can tell the difference between life for them under Biden and Harris versus life for them under Vance and Trump and Musk. And they're definitely going to side with us. This isn't even a question.
There's a lot of moving pieces. He's got to try and get people confirmed to fill these important positions in the government. And all those three positions are important. All three of them matter. And he's also got to prepare beyond that for all kinds of other challenges that are going to happen as soon, even after these people are in place. But no one should underestimate the ambition of what is being attempted. And that in itself means that one shouldn't be cynical about what's just been done with USAID. It does matter. It is important. And that Trump, Musk, and all of the others are doing all of these things shows that they are serious about what they're doing. It might not succeed. It might be a revolution that fails, but that a revolution is being attempted.
We can't afford to not succeed. And we're Americans. We're not known for failing, especially not Americans with the mandate of the future behind them, saving children, keeping the country keeping the sovereignty of the country, rejecting wokeness. It's do or die. There is no option to fail. But again, they don't live in the country, but they're great guys. And they're just being honest. They're seeing it from, a skybox view of the football field. And, I'm not on the field. I'm actually on the sideline, but I have a slightly different vision. But I have a bias towards which side wins. And I want our side to win. Everything is riding on it. So, but these guys gave a really great and amazing breakdown. Let me see what else they have to say, because we're going to end this pretty soon.
That is indisputable.
We're going to see how all of this unfolds. Absolutely, I agree with you, and I still think that the fight is yet to begin. And the deep state is going to hit back, and they're going to hit back with all of their might. Absolutely.
Well, in my opinion, they already did. What do you think those assassination attempts were? What do you think all these? I didn't even see a plane. We're going to do another video on this. We're going to go over this whole Philadelphia bullshit. This whole Philadelphia BS. We're going to go over it in a second. After we end this live, we're going to start up again. I see no evidence that a plane hit anywhere near Philadelphia at all. No plane wreckage. No. People don't understand. Engines are made of metal. Planes are not made out of paper mache. Engines are made of steel. There should be an engine somewhere. If there was a plane that went down, there should be parts. So we're going to go over that in a second too. But the deep state is trying its best to fight. It's just that they're having they gave us their best shot, and they never expected things to go this far. I'm sure the next time there's ever a Trump that comes around, they'll know, they'll have some, they'll be prepared. But again, they're not professionals at doing this. And also, they don't They're not their grandparents. You know, a lot of these people are oligarchs, nepos. So their parents were in this industry and their grandparents. But, you know, your kids and your grandkids become a bums compared to you. You know, they don't have the same drive. They don't have the same drive, you know, and a lot of these people are ideologues. You know, they're followers. You pay them. They do whatever you say, or they'll just say whatever nonsense that they're paid to say. Once we're drying up their money, you can't pay these people to say nonsense no more. Once, you know, we did a video about Al Sharpton, you know, like an hour ago. Once, you know, now that it's exposed like what he's really about, it's going to be less and less people giving him money. So that means less and less influence and less people that are going to be following him to make these nonsensical claims and yada, yada. It's just going to be less. Once you remove the money, you can remove your problem, because you got to pay for opposition. You got to pay for a war. Soldiers are not free, especially when you're conscripting them from other walks of life. If you're expecting them to put their time and energy into fighting for anything, if you're not compensating them, then they're not going to do it. I do this out of love for country and patriotism. I'm not paid to make these videos. I have barely one sponsor, or a couple of people that ask that they'll request I do an ad read. For the most part, I don't make any money doing this. I spend my own money doing this. I have a makeshift studio at my home, and I'm just talking to people. Eventually, now that I like doing this, of course I'm going to build a studio. Of course I'm going to, you know, become more professional with this and just talk more. But for now, I'm not being paid by anybody. I'm doing this because I love my country and I don't want to see it fall. I lost my home in California. I watched California fall. Luckily, I have a state like Texas I can run to. But if Texas falls and the Republic falls, where do I go? Colombia is an option, but I would have to leave here and go, oh, man, no, I'd rather stay here and try to keep what we have and fight and resist and reject and bring people back around to being normal, you know, and get rid of all this other nonsense that's just disgusting and unhealthy. Do me a favor, like and subscribe to the pages. The link's in the bio. Follow, support the sponsor. Follow our Instagram. Share the page on Rumble and YouTube. I'll be back on. We're going to go ahead and talk about this whole Philadelphia, all the different plane crashes, because there was another one in Houston. There was another one also in a couple of the cities that we're going to go over shortly. Okay, so I'll see you guys shortly. We're going to be opening up a new website too, ricobobby.com. And that way you'll see different news articles that I talk about on Instagram. You'll just be able to follow them directly on the website. And since I have such a huge issue with it getting censored, at least I'll have everything backed up on the website. But for now, we're just on YouTube, Rumble, Instagram, and X. So thank you very much, and I will talk to you guys again shortly. Here comes a word from our sponsor, cosigning.com.
I've been needing to find a new apartment, which has not been easy with credit as bad as mine. Luckily, I found cosigning.com. They connected me with a cosigner who helped me get my dream apartment for me and my dog. I just paid a small fee and was able to move in fast. Get the cosigner you need for the apartment you want. Check out cosigning.com.